Dontaesboxingnation.
Behind us, Cassius like, wait a minute, come here, Chad. I'm the greatest thing that ever lived. Now, I don't have a mark on my face, and I upset Sonny Liston, and I just turned 22 years old. I must be the greatest.
Dontaesboxingnation, what's going on, guys? So after Tyson Fury, he gets a very impressive knockout win over Dillian Whyte. ESPN, they had a camera crew documenting Shakur Stevenson because they were promoting the Shakur Stevenson versus Oscar Valdez fight. Well, Shakur Stevenson ended up saying something that ESPN liked so much that they decided to make a separate video just about what Shakur Stevenson said. So they actually recorded Shakur Stevenson watching the Tyson Fury fight. Now, before we unpack everything, I want to first start off by telling you guys exactly what Shakur Stevenson said. I'm quoting exactly what he said. He said that Tyson Fury is one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. And then he said this a couple of times. He said, I know I'm supposed to stand by my people, but we have to give credit when credit is due. He continued by saying, I know this is going to make some people angry, but Tyson Fury beats Muhammad Ali. He said Tyson Fury is 6'9" and he's 300 pounds. How is Muhammad Ali going to hit him? What, is he going to start fighting like Joe Frazier? Tyson Fury is too big for anybody. How is Muhammad Ali going to get inside? And as he says this, he's having a conversation with someone in the room, and clearly it sounds like they're already starting to debate with him because he says, I know, bro, I know. And then he ends it by saying, I know Muhammad Ali is quote unquote, I'm throwing in the quotes. He says, I know that Muhammad Ali is quote unquote the greatest, but man. Now, before I respond to every single thing Shakur Stevenson just said, regardless if you think what he just said was ridiculous or you completely agree, to all of the non-black boxing fans listening to this video right now, the way we just seen Shakur Stevenson praising Tyson Fury, how come we have never seen any of you non-black boxing fans and old media members praise any black fighter the same way? In other words, how come this type of respect Shakur Stevenson is showing is never reciprocated when it comes to black boxers? I mean, just think about it. When is the last time you've heard any boxing analyst from DAZN to ESPN, Chris Mannix, Max Kellerman, or anyone else in old media today, when have you ever heard them say anything close about a black boxer if he had beat someone who was not black? And we're not talking about going all the way back and telling someone, oh, one of my favorite fighters is Muhammad Ali or Mike Tyson. That doesn't count. We're talking about today. We're talking about someone doing exactly what Shakur Stevenson just did. That is a rhetorical question because we know what time it is. With that being said, now let's go ahead and unpack every single thing that Shakur Stevenson just said. Shakur, he said that Tyson Fury, he's 6'9" and he's 300 pounds. Actually, Tyson Fury was 264 pounds and Dillian Whyte was 253 pounds. So Tyson Fury had an 11-pound weight advantage over Dillian Whyte and a 5-inch height advantage over Whyte. So actually, if Tyson Fury would have weighed in close to 300 pounds to fight Dillian Whyte, he would have actually gave Dillian Whyte his best chance of pulling off an upset because Tyson Fury would have been more of a stationary target, just like he was in the third fight against Deontay Wilder. And Dillian Whyte is one of the hardest punchers in the heavyweight division. Okay, so then Shakur Stevenson, he says, how would Muhammad Ali get on the inside because of how tall Tyson Fury is, right? You know, it kind of surprises me to hear Shakur Stevenson say this in particular because Shakur Stevenson is arguably the most skilled fighter, at least when it comes to future pound-for-pound fighters. Shakur Stevenson is arguably the most skilled fighter in boxing. And as long as he's given the opportunities, he will most likely become, number one, the best fighter in the world. So to hear him say that, it surprises me a little bit because Mike Tyson He beat heavyweight champions in other heavyweights that had a 6 and even 7-inch height over him. So if Shakur is impressed with Tyson Fury, he must really be impressed with Mike Tyson. David Haye, he moved up from cruiserweight, and he beat the heavyweight champion at the time, the 7-foot-tall, 315 pounds, Nikolai Valuev. Not only did Nikolai Valuev have a 7-inch height advantage over David Haye, but he outweighed him by nearly 100 pounds. One website, they wrote an article that was entitled, David Haye versus Nikolai Valuev, Statistics of a Boxing Mismatch. Now let me just make this clear. This video is not really focused on debating fantasy matches like Tyson Fury versus Muhammad Ali. It's more about presenting the statistical facts when it comes to fighters that had massive height advantages and weight advantages and still lost. Muhammad Ali, who was 6'3", the tallest opponent he faced was former heavyweight champion Ernie Terrell, who was 6'6". But we do have to mention the point that just like everything else does in the world, the sport of boxing evolves. So if you are talking about fantasy matches like Tyson Fury versus Muhammad Ali, you have to keep in mind the Muhammad Ali that we know from the 60s, if he was fighting today, there's no doubt about it, he would be better because the fighters today, they train different. The opponents today are far more versatile. And with a fighter like Muhammad Ali, who was already ahead of his time, you could already imagine how well he would have adjusted. Now let's touch on when Shakur Stevenson, he repeatedly said, I stand with my people, but I gotta be real. I gotta tell the truth when it comes to this situation. I wanna make it very clear to everyone. It's never really been about standing with your people. It's about speaking the truth. It's about the whole truth. So I don't expect Shakur Stevenson to say anything just based on standing by his people. Now, sure, we may hear a lot of Mexican boxers, when you ask them, who do you think is going to win? And the first thing they say is, look, man, I'm Mexican, so I got to go with the Mexican. And it's nothing wrong with them saying that. I have no problem with them saying that at all. But speaking the truth, it has nothing to do with sticking by your own people. So giving someone credit for a win that they deserve credit for, that's what you're supposed to do. The only problem is, in the sport of boxing, the only time that's not done is when it's a black fighter, especially when he's beating someone who's not black. When Shakur Stevenson said, I believe that I would beat Canelo Alvarez if we were in the same weight class, I would do the same thing that Floyd Mayweather did. Shakur didn't say that because he was trying to stick with his people. He said that because that's what he truly believes. He said that because it logically made sense if you have been paying attention to Canelo Alvarez's career. We've seen Canelo Alvarez get outboxed by fighters like Caleb Plant, Billy Joe Saunders, an old faded Sergey Kovalev, to, of course, Floyd Mayweather the Great, and even Edislani Lara, and even Amir Khan. And we already know, if we're being honest deep down, that the majority of those names that I just mentioned, they didn't have half the skill that a Shakur Stevenson has. Sticking with your people is when someone asks you to give them a prediction or an analytical breakdown, and your only response is, well, you know what, I'm Mexican, so I got to go with the Mexican. If I tell you right now that Shakur Stevenson is one of the very few that has the potential to not only be pound for pound one of the best fighters in the world, but pound for pound #1, the best fighter in the world, the pound for pound king, that statement has nothing to do with the people that you stick with. If you're not a racist and you're paying attention to everything that Shakur is doing in the ring, then everyone could see his potential. Almost every boxing fan can see that Shakur Stevenson is on another level compared to a lot of other fighters. Now, last but not least, let's talk about Shakur Stevenson saying that Tyson Fury is one of the greatest fighters of all time. The first thing I will say is there's no doubt about it. Tyson Fury is the most accomplished heavyweight in the division right now because he beat Deontay Wilder, and because Anthony Joshua, he just lost. Now, of course, we don't know what's going to happen in the rematch with Usyk, but that definitely makes Tyson Fury the most accomplished right now. but there's still way too much unfinished business to say he's the best of this era. I mean, because we can't just give Tyson Fury credit for fights that he didn't take. And we also can't give him credit for beating Muhammad Ali in fantasy matches. Speaking of Muhammad Ali, Shakur Stevenson, he said that Tyson Fury is one of the greatest fighters of all time, but then he said he beats Muhammad Ali. So the question is, who does Shakur Stevenson believes is the greatest fighter of all time? Because if he's saying, once again, Tyson is one of, but beats Muhammad Ali, that means Shakur is saying that someone else is the greatest fighter of all time. And it's obviously not Muhammad Ali or Tyson Fury. Now, remember earlier in this video, I said that Shakur Stevenson, he said, and I told you, I added the quotes, because whenever people talk about Muhammad Ali, they always say, yeah, Muhammad Ali is the greatest. But we usually say that because that's what Muhammad Ali called himself. He called himself the greatest. Now, if we're comparing Tyson Fury to Muhammad Ali, if you were to tell somebody that Tyson Fury was the greatest and they were to ask you, well, who did he beat? What makes him the greatest? When it comes to Muhammad Ali, we know what made Muhammad Ali either the greatest or one of the greatest is the fact that he beat Sonny Liston. He beat Joe Frazier in the best of three. And one of the hardest things he did was beating a young, undefeated lion in George Foreman. You often hear boxers say it's easier to win the titles than it is to keep them. And we've seen a lot of the great heavyweights, from Muhammad Ali to Lennox Lewis and even the Klitschko brothers, win the title and defend the title against young, dangerous, undefeated heavyweight prospects. So since we know who Muhammad Ali beat, what are you going to say if someone asks you, who did Tyson Fury beat? And you're going to obviously say Deontay Wilder. He beat Deontay Wilder and he beat Dillian White. And when Tyson beat Vladimir Klitschko, that's when he tested positive for PEDs, which Klitschko reminded Tyson Fury. While Tyson was accusing Alexander Usyk of taking steroids, Klitschko responded to Tyson and he said, Tyson Fury, you live in a glass house and someone needs to take away your stones. Wasn't long ago, before our fight, where you actually tested positive. Anyone can Google it. Keep it classy. So now we talk about the Deontay Wilder fight and the Dillian White fight. Let's focus on Deontay Wilder for a second. This is where I want to talk to all of you non-black fans. I want to ask you directly, before Deontay Wilder lost to Tyson Fury, what were you guys all saying about Deontay Wilder? You guys remember what you were saying? Because you filled up the comment section on my videos and on the internet. You guys constantly said that Deontay Wilder, he was the worst heavyweight champion of all time. He has zero skills. He's windmill Wilder, etc., etc., etc. You guys even heard me say on multiple videos that Deontay Wilder does not beat you with his skill. He beats you with his will and that right hand. Of course, Deontay Wilder was dangerous with that right hand and it was his equalizer, but you guys have never heard me call Deontay Wilder pound for pound one of the best fighters in the world. So the question is, when it comes to all of Muhammad Ali's signature wins, do you recall any of those opponents that Muhammad Ali faced, from Sonny Liston to Joe Frazier to George Foreman? Can you recall any boxing fans or writers that was calling these fighters the worst skilled fighters in the heavyweight division, that was calling them bums? And then you have Dillian White. Even though I personally thought that Dillian White was going to do much better than he did in this fight, just based off what the biggest Tyson Fury fans were saying before the fight about Dillian White, we can all agree, even though it was a very impressive win by Tyson Fury, beating a Dillian White is not necessarily the type of win that a fighter gets that makes it clear that Tyson Fury is one of the greatest fighters of all time. Clearly, the standards and the bar is always set a lot lower when we're talking about a fighter that is not black. How else can we explain Muhammad Ali beating George Foreman, Sonny Liston, and Joe Frazier, and Tyson Fury only had to beat Deontay Wilder and Dillian White? Meanwhile, someone like Lennox Lewis, who's the last heavyweight to become undisputed, not only did he become undisputed, but he defended his title against the dangerous, undefeated, young, hungry Lions, and he beat them all, from David Tua to beating Vitaly Klitschko, which was pretty much a super fight at the time. After Vitaly Klitschko lost to Lennox Lewis, Vitaly, he became a very long reigning heavyweight champion. You see, the truth is, it doesn't matter if people believe what Shakur Stevenson said and they know it's not true. It doesn't matter. They only care that it's being said. And when I say they, I'm mainly talking about ESPN, because I told you, they liked what Shakur said so much that they decided him saying all of these things deserved its own separate video. Forget about Blood, Sweat, and Tears, the series. They said, oh, we got to do a separate video. Listen to what he just said about Tyson Fury. Now, the question is, will ESPN ever show this type of same energy if Shakur Stevenson does become pound for pound the best fighter in the world? Will they go out of their way to tell the world that Shakur Stevenson is the best fighter in the world? Hell, Shakur is not only the best fighter in the world, Shakur is already one of the greatest fighters of all time. Is ESPN going to say that? Is DAZN going to say that? Are any of these old media members going to say this about Shakur Stevenson? Are they going to give him any additional points for actually saying what he said about Tyson Fury? Are they going to take that into consideration when they see how dominant Shakur Stevenson is, assuming he gets past Oscar Valdez and puts on a very impressive performance, which we believe that he will? And then he does this against even bigger names. But we already know, it is a known fact that can be proven just by paying attention to what's going on in boxing, that when it comes to fighters on the coincidental list, the bar is set much, much higher than just beating a Deontay Wilder and a Dillian White to be considered one of the greatest fighters of all time. Remember, ESPN is the same network that said Gennady Golovkin was one of the greatest fighters of all time. That was before he even fought Canelo 2 times. And just like Shakur Stevenson said right now that Tyson Fury is one of the greatest heavyweights of all time, he would beat Muhammad Ali. Remember, guys, there was a time way before Roman Chocolatito got knocked out and before anyone really even knew who he was, and he didn't have too many accomplishments. Old media started calling this man pound for pound the best fighter in the world, and Floyd Mayweather agreed with old media. It was funny because they asked Floyd Mayweather, who is pound for pound the best fighter in the world? And I remember Floyd Mayweather, he said, what's the dude's name? What's that guy's name? Chocolatito? Yeah, him, Chocolatito Gonzalez. The way Floyd Mayweather said it, there's a very good chance that Floyd Mayweather had never even watched a Roman Gonzalez fight. But everyone was saying that he was pound for pound the best fighter in the world. So it's almost like some people, they look at it like, oh, well, you guys have already gave me the answer to the test because this is who you guys are telling us is the best. At the end of the day, I told you guys, Shakur Stevenson, he pretty much went out of his way to not only praise Tyson Fury, but say he would beat Muhammad Ali. And he's already one of the greatest fighters of all time. He doesn't have to become undisputed like Lennox Lewis. He doesn't have to take on the young, hungry Lions like Jared Anderson, the undefeated mandatory like Joe Joyce. In other words, he doesn't have to do things that Muhammad Ali had to do. Because just saying that these guys or no one can beat him is already good enough. That's how good it is being on the hope list. You don't even have to prove it. You can just say, or someone can say for you, that Tyson, he doesn't have to become undisputed because he would beat the winner of Joshua Usyk. He would beat Jared Anderson. He would beat Joe Joyce. And whoever else is coming up, climbing up the ladder, he would beat them. So he gets a pass. He doesn't even have to fight them. So if that's the case, we should already be calling Shakur Stevenson pound for pound. He shouldn't even have to fight Oscar Valdez or anyone else, because we already believe that he can beat almost anyone that they put in front of him, right? But we know what time it is. Someone like Shakur Stevenson is not going to get that luxury. As young as he is still, an Oscar Valdez win is bigger than a Dillian Whyte win because he's undefeated, he's a 2-division champ, and none of you guys that called Deontay Wilder all of the things you called him called Oscar Valdez any of these things, right? Exactly. So with that being said, I'm gonna wrap this video up. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one.
I'm just excited, dog.
So how long was the dad take right there?
How much are you saying?
Like 2 hours.
That was it?
For this is the first section.
So this.
Oh, so it get better than that?
Oh yeah, I'm just starting him off. I gotta see him.
Well, you came to the right man, dog.
So
You came to the right
this
one.
brother here walked in, looking to get his stuff done. He just got his first session. What do you think?
It definitely looked good. It's perfect to me. You know what I mean?
Perfect to me too.
He said,
Fellas, I've got some great news for you. If you've lost your hair or have a receding hairline, the time has come when you can finally get your hairline back through a process called scalp micropigmentation. So here's how it works. It's a hair tattoo that replicates the look of your hair follicles when you have fully shaved it down. So to get this hookup, make sure you follow and contact my man ScalpCarolinas on Instagram. All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, then this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called kk Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to lodk.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram.